My DOC number was 252371, and like when you lose your freedom like that, like I was no longer Morgan Vetter. Like nobody called me Morgan Vetter. I was inmate 252371. You got to be real humble to go to prison. Real humble. Once I got to prison, I completed recovery while incarcerated, and there we were assigned therapists. We did group therapy, and we had to attend so many meetings. I think once you first enter into the program, if I remember right, we did have to do 90 meetings in 90 days. It was definitely brought up, the trauma and then the trauma responses that I had, practiced throughout my life. And we identified that, talked about a lot of hard things, and it was so structured. They are instilling in you ways to correct your negative thinking, the group therapy, the individual therapy, the CBD skills, cognitive behavioral therapy, and all of that stuff. In order to stop doing what I was doing, I had to be honest. And so I had never been honest up until that point about anything in my life, who I was hanging out with, to what types of drugs I did, to I had never been honest. So while in that program, we had to participate, and in order to participate, you had to be honest. We literally spent weeks coming up with, if not months, coming up with a plan of how are we going to integrate back into society? How am I going to do it safely? What things should I not do? Who are the people that, I can trust? Who are the people that I can't trust? The safest way. And we talked about it over and over again until, we had come up with a solid plan. What's your plan? When you get home, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to meetings? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? And so it was a solid way to kind of get you prepared to come back into society. I modified for a sentence reduction. The judge granted it. So my plan worked. Upon my release, the judge granted my modification, but only on the stipulation that I complete a reentry program, which is a phased program. You had to go through and graduate through 4 phases before the judge would allow you basically to reintegrate back into society.
The vast majority of the people coming into reentry court now are going into the Howard County Work Release Facility. They are housed in the work release facility, and they are expected to abide by the rules governing safety of the facility that are established by work release.
So, went to court every week, had to check in with my probation officer multiple times a week in the beginning. I did also come home on an ankle monitor, so it was all these things. I had a lot of accountability, and I also had, there was a fire lit under my butt because I was sentenced to 17 years. I did 2.5. So if I messed up, I'm going back to prison for 15 years. They tell you what you can and what you can't do, and you can't talk to anybody that's a felon. If you get caught talking to someone who's a felon, you'll get a sanction or you get in trouble. We had to take drug tests, random drug tests. We had to call this hotline every single day. And the hotline would say, yes, you test today, or no, you don't. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to do was integrate back into society after being incarcerated and changing my whole thinking system. From the way I thought, thinking errors, all of these things that they teach you. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to lean on people. It's okay to build a support system and be vulnerable and transparent. Honestly, you can't do recovery and you can't do life without having those things.
I was 6 months into Progress House. No, 5 months in, when me and her met at a fundraising event, and it was called Fight Night. I saw her, and then I went back to the sober living, and I Facebook messaged her because I was a punk, and I was afraid to talk to her because, once again, my value was 0. I had a house arrest bracelet. I had no job. I had no money. I was in sober living. I was a catch. Let me tell you.
I very distinctly remember a conversation that we had over the phone where I had told him that my recovery comes first. Like, before our relationship, like, my recovery is gonna come first. And he responded with, I can deal with that. My recovery comes first for me as well. And I think at that moment, I was like, okay, we might can make this work. And so I think for us it was very important from the beginning to establish that, you know, I'm gonna do what works for me and you can do what works for you. And we never really crossed that boundary with each other. We've always done a really good job of upholding that.
So Morgan, she came back from DOC and she started coming to meetings. Still a lot of unresolved and a lot of healing that needed to happen. I met Shaun through her coming to recovery meetings, coming to the 12-step recovery meeting. So Shaun began to tell his story at recovery meetings, you know, sleeping behind the filling station on the skids and where he had been and his trauma he had been through. And they had started dating at that time. And again, I'm sure I told Morgan, just stay on guard, take it slow.
Shaun left the actual like inpatient sober living, and he moved to like a transition housing. And he was there for, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 7 months. And then I had asked him if he wanted to move in with me, move to Kokomo, and he was like, sure, why not?
And then that following year, I had celebrated 3 years of recovery. And right before that, we found out she was pregnant with twins. And I got engaged to her right then and there.